You possess a specific combination of qualities that makes you dangerously attractive to the avoidant person in ways that go far beyond surface attraction or simple compatibility, creating perfect storm of appeal that draws them to you with intensity they rarely experience while simultaneously triggering their deepest fears and most intense defensive responses. This dangerous attractiveness is not about physical appearance, though that may be part of it, but is about the particular constellation of your psychological, emotional, and relational qualities that creates unique and overwhelming pull for the avoidant person, precisely because these qualities address their deepest unmet needs while also threatening their most defended wounds. You are dangerous to the avoidant because you see them, truly see them beneath their defenses and their carefully constructed image. And instead of being repelled by what you see, you're drawn to it with compassion and acceptance that the avoidant has rarely, if ever, experienced. You are dangerous because you're emotionally available and vulnerable in ways that show them what genuine intimacy could feel like, while terrifying them with how exposed they would have to be to match that intimacy. You are dangerous because you're patient and understanding with their patterns in ways that create safety they've never known, while also making them aware of how much they're missing by maintaining their defenses. You are dangerous because you have your own strength and wholeness. That means you're not desperately needy, but are choosing to invest in them from a place of genuine care rather than from a place of desperate dependency, which makes your investment more valuable and more threatening. You are dangerous because you represent possibility of the very thing they want most and fear most: being truly known and still loved, being accepted with all their wounds and limitations, experiencing intimacy that doesn't destroy them. The avoidant person is drawn to you with pull. They cannot fully resist because you offer what their wounded heart desperately needs, but they're also compelled to push you away because receiving what you offer would require dismantling the defenses that have protected them their entire life, would require vulnerability they don't know if they can survive, would require risking the very abandonment and rejection they've organized their life around preventing. This makes you dangerously attractive in most literal sense. The attraction is real and powerful and potentially life-changing for the avoidant if they could receive what you offer, but it's also genuinely dangerous to their defended equilibrium, threatening to destabilize the protective strategies they've relied on, forcing them into territory of vulnerability and emotional risk they've spent lifetime avoiding. Understanding why you're dangerously attractive to the avoidant illuminates both the depth of your impact on them and the tragedy of their inability to receive what you represent. The specific qualities that make you irresistible and threatening. You possess a particular combination of qualities that makes you uniquely and dangerously attractive to the avoidant person, qualities that work in concert to create perfect storm of appeal that the avoidant cannot easily dismiss or forget, even when they're pushing you away. Understanding these specific qualities and why they're both irresistible and threatening reveals why you have such profound impact on the avoidant person and why they keep returning to you or thinking about you, even when they cannot be with you. The first quality that makes you dangerously attractive is your capacity to see beneath the avoidance defenses to the wounded person underneath, and to respond to that wounded person with compassion rather than with judgment or exploitation. The avoidant person spends their life hiding their wounds, their needs, their vulnerabilities behind carefully constructed image of independence and self-sufficiency. Most people interact only with this defended image, never seeing deeper, never recognizing the scared and hurt person beneath the competent exterior. But you saw through it. You recognized their defensive patterns as protection rather than as their true self. You perceived their wounds even when they were trying to hide them. And crucially, when you saw these wounds, Your response was not to judge them as weak or damaged, not to exploit their vulnerabilities, not to pull away in disgust or fear. Instead, you responded with compassion, with desire to understand, with acceptance that communicated you saw them fully and still chose to be there. This seeing and this compassionate response is irresistible to the avoidant because it's what they've always needed but never received, to be truly known and still accepted. But it's also threatening because being seen means being vulnerable, means someone has access to the parts of themselves they most need to protect, means they cannot hide or maintain their defended image with you. The second quality that makes you dangerously attractive is your emotional availability and your willingness to be vulnerable, which models what the avoidant wishes they could be, while simultaneously making demands on them that terrify them. You're able to express your feelings, to share your needs, to show your vulnerabilities, to communicate openly about your internal experience. This emotional availability is not neediness or weakness, but is healthy capacity for intimacy that the avoidant recognizes as valuable, even while they cannot match it. You show them what emotional intimacy looks like, what it could feel like to have a partner who is present and open and willing to share themselves. This is irresistible because it's preview of the very thing the avoidant wants underneath their defenses: real connection, genuine intimacy, being fully known and fully knowing another. But it's threatening because your emotional availability creates implicit and sometimes explicit expectation that they should reciprocate, that they should match your vulnerability with their own, that they should open up in ways that feel impossibly dangerous. Your modeling of healthy emotional expression makes them aware of their own emotional constipation and creates pressure to change that activates their defenses. The third quality that makes you dangerously attractive is your combination of strength and softness, wholeness and openness, independence and desire for connection. You're not needy or desperate, but are choosing them from a place of genuine care and genuine choice. The avoidant is often attracted to independence and strength because these qualities feel safe. Someone strong and independent won't desperately need them, won't make them feel suffocated or trapped. But they're also attracted to warmth and emotional availability because these qualities offer the connection they crave underneath their defenses. You offer both. You're clearly capable of being alone, clearly have your own life and your own identity, clearly don't need them to complete you. But you also want them. Choose to invest in them. Offer warmth and care and emotional presence. This combination is irresistible because it means the avoidant can have connection without feeling trapped, can experience intimacy with someone who won't collapse without them. But it's also threatening because someone who is strong enough to choose you is also strong enough to choose to leave. Someone who has their own wholeness doesn't need to tolerate your patterns the way a desperate person would. Someone who is investing from genuine choice rather than from desperate need is actually harder to control and harder to predict than someone who is needy and dependent. The fourth quality that makes you dangerously attractive is your patience and understanding with their patterns, your ability to recognize their defensive behavior as protection rather than as rejection or lack of caring. When the avoidant withdraws, when they're hot and cold, when they pull away, most people respond with hurt that turns to anger, with demands for explanation, with ultimatums, or with giving up. But you responded differently. You gave space without making it feel like abandonment. You tried to understand what was driving their behavior rather than just reacting to its surface manifestations. You recognized their patterns as defensive responses to fear rather than as evidence they didn't care. This patience and understanding is irresistible because it creates safety the avoidant has never experienced. Safety to have their patterns without immediately destroying the relationship, safety to struggle without being condemned, safety to be imperfect, and defended without instant rejection. But it's also threatening because this safety, if fully trusted, would require the avoidant to eventually lower their defenses and actually engage with the intimacy you're offering, would remove their justification for keeping distance, that people can't handle their patterns, would create responsibility to actually work on themselves rather than blaming partners for not understanding them. The fifth quality that makes you dangerously attractive is your combination of acceptance and challenge, your ability to accept them as they are while also gently inviting them to grow. You don't demand that they change or issue ultimatums that they be different. You accept their current limitations and their wounds with compassion. But you also, through your own emotional availability and your gentle questions and your maintained boundaries, invite them to consider whether they want to remain as they are, whether their patterns serve them, whether they might want to work toward a greater capacity. This balance is irresistible because it offers acceptance that feels rare and precious, while also treating them as capable of growth, as someone whose potential you see and believe in. But it's threatening because the invitation to grow, however gentle, requires them to acknowledge their limitations and to consider changing defensive patterns that feel necessary for survival, requires them to sit with discomfort and to risk vulnerability they're not sure they can handle. The sixth quality that makes you dangerously attractive is your capacity to maintain your own sense of worth and your own boundaries, even when the avoidance patterns would invite you to abandon them. You don't lose yourself in the relationship. You don't sacrifice your needs entirely to accommodate theirs. You maintain awareness of what you need and deserve, even while being patient with their process. You're willing to walk away rather than accept treatment that falls too far below your standards. This self-worth and boundary maintenance is irresistible because it means you're not easily controlled or manipulated, because it makes you more valuable. People want what maintains its value, because it shows strength that the avoidant respects even when it works against their interests. But it's threatening because it means the avoidant cannot take you for granted, cannot assume you'll always be there regardless of how they treat you, cannot rely on your neediness or your lack of boundaries to keep you available while they work through their ambivalence on their own timeline. The seventh quality that makes you dangerously attractive is your genuine care for them and your desire for their well-being, even when the relationship isn't working or isn't meeting your needs. You're not trying to change them for your benefit. You're not with them just because of what they provide to you. You genuinely care about them as person, want them to be happy and whole, see their potential, and believe in their capacity for healing and growth. This genuine care is irresistible because it's love that feels unconditional in ways the avoidant has rarely experienced, because it means you're seeing their inherent worth beyond their performance or their ability to meet your needs. But it's threatening because love that genuine, care that deep, creates level of mattering and significance that the avoidant finds terrifying. If they matter to you that much, if you care about them that deeply, then they have power to really hurt you. Then their choices really impact someone else. Then they're responsible for something beyond themselves, all of which creates pressure and obligation that triggers their flight response. These qualities in combination create perfect storm that makes you dangerously attractive to the avoidant. You see them, accept them, challenge them, care about them, maintain your own worth, model healthy intimacy, and offer safety alongside invitation to growth. No one quality alone would create the same impact. It's the constellation of all of them together that makes you irresistible and threatening, that draws the avoidant to you. With intensity they rarely feel, while simultaneously activating their deepest fears and most powerful defenses. You represent what they most want and most fear, and this makes you the most dangerous person to their defended equilibrium, while also making you the most important person in their emotional landscape, the one they cannot forget, the one who represents both their potential healing and their greatest threat. Why your attraction triggers their deepest fears and desires simultaneously. The dangerous attractiveness you hold for the avoidant person is rooted in the paradoxical reality that you trigger their deepest desires and their deepest fears simultaneously, creating internal conflict in the avoidant that is almost unbearable and that drives the push-pull dynamic they enact with you. Understanding this simultaneous triggering of opposing forces reveals why the avoidance behavior toward you is so contradictory, and why being dangerously attractive guarantees difficulty rather than ensuring relationship success. You trigger the avoidant's deepest desire to be truly known and still loved, to have someone see all of them, including their wounds and their limitations, and to choose them anyway, to experience the unconditional acceptance they didn't receive in childhood. Every human has this desire for unconditional positive regard, for being fully seen and fully accepted. But for the avoidant, this desire is particularly strong because it was so thoroughly frustrated in their early experiences. They learned that being fully known led to rejection, that showing their needs resulted in those needs being dismissed or punished, that vulnerability created danger rather than connection. So they buried this desire beneath defenses, convinced themselves they didn't need acceptance or deep connection, organized their life around independence that protected them from having to want something they believed they couldn't have. But you awaken this desire, your seeing of them, your acceptance of their wounded parts, your willingness to stay despite their patterns. All of this showed them that maybe unconditional acceptance is possible. Maybe being fully known doesn't inevitably lead to rejection. Maybe they could have what they've always wanted, but learn to stop wanting. This awakening of their deepest desire is powerful and creates strong pull toward you. But simultaneously, you trigger the avoidant's deepest fear of abandonment and rejection, the terror that if they fully open themselves, if they allow themselves to need you, if they depend on your acceptance and your presence, you will eventually leave or hurt them in ways they won't survive. The avoidance defenses develop specifically to protect against this feared abandonment. They learn through painful experience that depending on others leads to being hurt, that trusting leads to betrayal, that opening up leads to the pain of having that openness rejected or exploited. Their entire defensive structure is designed to prevent them from ever being in position where someone's leaving could devastate them, where someone's rejection could confirm their deepest fear that they're unlovable. But accepting what you offer, receiving your love, allowing themselves to need you, all of this would place them in exactly the position they've spent their life protecting against. If they open to you fully, if they let themselves need your acceptance and your presence, and then you leave or reject them, they believe it would confirm their worst fear and would destroy them. The terror of this possibility is enormous and creates equally powerful push away from you. You trigger the avoidance desire for genuine intimacy and deep connection, for experiencing the richness and the meaning that comes from truly sharing oneself with another and from being in relationship where both people are fully present. Underneath the avoidance defended independence is loneliness and longing for connection. They're not actually satisfied being alone. They don't actually prefer isolated life to intimate partnership. They want connection, just like everyone else wants connection. They want to matter to someone. They want to be important. They want to share their life with someone who understands them. They want the depth and the meaning that comes from building something with another person. Your presence and your offer of genuine intimacy awakens this desire, shows them what they could have, gives them taste of what real connection feels like. When they're with you, when they allow moments of genuine intimacy, they feel more alive, more themselves, more connected to meaning than they feel in their defended isolation. This feeling is powerful and creates desire to move toward you and toward the intimacy you offer. But simultaneously, you trigger the avoidance fear of losing themselves, of being engulfed or consumed by a relationship, of their identity dissolving into partnership in ways that feel like death of self. The avoidance sense of self is fragile and is maintained through defended boundaries and through emphasis on independence. They fear that if they truly merge with another person, if they allow themselves to become interdependent, if they prioritize relationship needs alongside individual needs, they will lose themselves, will cease to exist as autonomous individual, will be consumed by the other person's needs and expectations. This fear is rooted in early experiences where their autonomy wasn't respected, where their needs were subsumed to others' needs, where being in relationship with their caregivers required suppressing their authentic self. Intimacy with you activates this fear because genuine intimacy does require some surrender of complete autonomy, does require considering another person in your decisions, does require making space for another person's needs and presence in your life. The avoidant experiences this as an existential threat rather than as natural aspect of healthy partnership. And this fear creates powerful push away from the very intimacy they also desire. You trigger the avoidance desire to trust and to believe that love can be safe, that vulnerability doesn't inevitably lead to pain, that they can lower their defenses without being destroyed. The defended life is exhausting. Maintaining constant vigilance against intimacy takes energy. Living behind walls is lonely. Part of the avoidant wants desperately to believe that they don't have to live this way, that they could trust someone, that they could be vulnerable without catastrophic consequences, that love could be safe and good rather than dangerous and painful. Your consistent care, your reliability, your patience with their patterns, all of this creates evidence that maybe trust is possible, maybe you're safe, maybe they could lower their defenses with you without the pain they fear. This possibility is tantalizing and creates desire to take the risk, to try trusting you, to believe that you're different from the people who hurt them before. But simultaneously, you trigger the avoidance belief that trusting is foolish and naive, that everyone eventually hurts you, that the pain of betrayed trust is worse than the loneliness of defended isolation. The avoidance history has taught them that trust leads to pain. Every time they trusted and were hurt, every time they were vulnerable and were rejected, these experiences created learning that trust is dangerous. Their defensive system uses this learning to argue against trusting you. Maybe they seem safe now, but everyone seems safe at first. Maybe they're patient now, but that patience will end when they see how damaged you really are. Maybe they claim to accept you, but no one actually accepts someone with your wounds and your patterns. This inner voice of defended distrust creates powerful resistance to trusting you, even when part of them wants to trust, creates certainty that trusting you will eventually lead to the pain they're protecting against, creates conviction that maintaining their defenses is wisdom rather than limitation. You trigger the avoidance desire to heal, to work through their wounds, to develop capacity for intimacy and connection that their current patterns prevent. Part of the avoidant knows their patterns don't serve them, knows they're missing out on life and love, knows they're stuck repeating cycles that create loneliness and regret. Your presence creates hope that healing is possible, that they could change, that they could develop different relationship with intimacy and vulnerability. You're modeling of emotional health, your gentle invitations to consider their patterns, your belief in their capacity for growth. All of this awakens their desire to heal, to become person who could receive what you offer, to do the work their wounds require. This desire for healing creates pull toward the discomfort and the work that transformation requires. But simultaneously, you trigger the avoidance fear of the vulnerability and pain that healing would require, the terror of having to feel the feelings they've suppressed, of having to examine the wounds they've tried to leave behind. Healing attachment wounds requires revisiting the original pain, sitting with feelings that were too overwhelming to process when they occurred, allowing oneself to feel the hurt and the anger and the grief that defensive patterns were designed to prevent. The avoidant knows at some level that working through their wounds would be painful, would require them to feel things they've organized their life around not feeling, would demand they sit with vulnerability and discomfort for extended periods without the relief of their usual defensive strategies. This anticipated pain of healing process creates powerful resistance to beginning it, creates preference for maintaining familiar defended position, even if it's limiting, rather than risking the unknown pain of transformation. This simultaneous triggering of opposing forces, desire and fear, longing and terror, hope and conviction of inevitable pain, creates unbearable internal conflict in the avoidant that manifests as the push-pull dynamic they enact with you. When the desire side is ascendant, when their longing for connection and acceptance is stronger than their fear, they pull toward you, they engage, they open up, they allow intimacy. But this movement toward you and toward intimacy activates the fear side, makes the threats feel more real and more immediate, triggers their defenses and their conviction that they need to protect themselves. So they push away, they withdraw, they create distance that eases their fear. But the distance activates the desire again, makes them feel the loneliness and the loss, reminds them of what you offer that no one else offers. And the cycle continues, with you caught in the middle of their internal war between what they want and what they fear, between their longing for healing and their commitment to self-protection, between their desire for you and their terror of needing you. How being dangerously attractive guarantees the push-pull dynamic. Your dangerous attractiveness to the avoidant person doesn't create possibility for smooth, stable relationship, but instead guarantees the push-pull dynamic that characterizes avoidant relationships, ensuring that the stronger their attraction to you, the more intense their defensive responses will be. Understanding how and why being dangerously attractive creates this dynamic, rather than creating secure attachment, reveals both the mechanism of the avoidance patterns and the tragedy that being exactly right for them makes relationship with them nearly impossible. Being dangerously attractive guarantees the push phase because your attractive qualities activate the avoidance intimacy anxiety and trigger their defensive system. The very things that draw them to you, your ability to see them deeply, your emotional availability, your genuine care, your invitation to intimacy, are the things that threaten their defended equilibrium. When they pull close to you, when they allow connection, when they experience the intimacy you offer, they begin to feel the vulnerability and the exposure that intimacy creates. They notice they're becoming attached, that you matter to them, that they're thinking about you constantly, that their emotional state is affected by your responses. All of these are signs of healthy attachment, but for the avoidant, they're warning signals of danger. Their defensive system interprets growing attachment as growing vulnerability, interprets mattering to you as giving you power to hurt them, interprets emotional dependence as weakness and threat. This triggers their anxiety and their flight response, initiating the push phase, where they withdraw to restore their sense of safety and control. The more attracted they are to you, the more intense the push will be, because greater attraction means greater threat to their defenses. If they were only mildly attracted to you, if you didn't matter that much, they could maintain connection without too much anxiety because the stakes would be low. But because you're dangerously attractive, because you matter enormously, because the connection feels so important and so real, the stakes are high, and the threat is proportional. The more they want you, the more devastating it would be to lose you, so the more defended they need to be against that potential loss. This creates paradox, where being exactly right for them makes them more likely to push you away, rather than less likely, where matching their needs perfectly creates more anxiety rather than less, because perfect match means they have more to lose. Being dangerously attractive guarantees the pull phase, because the qualities that make you threatening are also the qualities that make you irreplaceable and impossible to forget. When the avoidant creates distance, when they push you away and retreat to their defended isolation, they don't experience the relief they might experience if they were distancing from someone less significant. Instead, they experience the loss of what you provide, the absence of the understanding and acceptance and safety you offered. They compare new people to you and find everyone lacking. They remember what connection with you felt like and recognize that their defended isolation is empty by comparison. They miss you. They question whether pushing you away was a mistake. They want what you offer because what you offer is genuinely valuable and genuinely rare. This longing and this recognition of what they lost creates the pull phase, where they're drawn back toward you, where they reach out or they want to reach out, where they're trying to restore some level of connection, because being without you is more painful than they anticipated. The cycle is guaranteed to repeat, because the avoidant has not addressed the underlying wounds and defensive patterns that create the push-pull dynamic. Moving toward you activates their anxiety and triggers the push. Distancing from you activates their longing and triggers the pull. But neither phase addresses the core issue, their attachment wounds and their terror of vulnerability that make intimacy feel threatening regardless of how safe you actually are. Without therapeutic work that addresses these core wounds, without development of capacity to tolerate intimacy without fleeing, the avoidant will continue the cycle indefinitely. Being dangerously attractive doesn't break the cycle. It intensifies the cycle because you matter enough to create strong push and strong pull, because you're significant enough that both staying and leaving feel impossible, because you represent both what they most want and what most threatens them. Being dangerously attractive makes the dynamic particularly painful for you, because the intensity of their attraction and their periodic closeness creates hope that makes each push more devastating. If they were consistently distant, if they never showed you the depths of their feelings or their capacity for connection, you could write them off more easily. But because they do pull close sometimes, because they do show you genuine intimacy in moments, because their attraction to you is real and is sometimes expressed, you experience hope that they can sustain it, that this time will be different, that they're finally going to overcome their patterns. This hope makes each withdrawal more painful, because it feels like loss of something that was becoming real, like betrayal of the intimacy that was developing, like evidence that what felt so right to you is still too threatening to them. The cycle of hope and disappointment is more damaging than consistent distance would be, because it prevents you from fully grieving and moving on, while also preventing you from having the stable relationship you deserve. Being dangerously attractive also guarantees the push-pull dynamic, because your strength and your boundaries mean you won't tolerate the dynamic indefinitely without consequence, which creates time pressure and intensity that the avoidant finds both motivating and overwhelming. If you were someone without boundaries, someone who would accept the push-pull indefinitely, the avoidant might be able to maintain the dynamic forever at low level of intensity. But because you're strong, because you have standards, because you will eventually walk away if they cannot show up consistently, there's implicit deadline and implicit consequence. The avoidant recognizes they will lose you if they cannot change, that your patience is not infinite, that their patterns have costs. This recognition sometimes motivates movement toward you, motivates moments of breakthrough where they try harder or open up more, but it also creates pressure that triggers their defenses, makes them feel controlled or obligated, activates their need to prove their independence by pulling away. Your strength and boundaries are necessary and healthy, but they also intensify the dynamic by creating consequences that the avoidant finds both motivating and threatening. The guarantee of the push-pull dynamic means that being dangerously attractive to the avoidant is not advantage, but is burden, not sign of special connection, but is predictor of pain. If you were less attractive to them, if you mattered less, the relationship might be easier because the stakes would be lower and their anxiety would be less activated. But being dangerously attractive means you trigger their entire defensive system, means you activate their deepest conflicts, means you create the perfect storm that makes stable relationship nearly impossible without significant therapeutic work on their part that most avoidants never undertake. Your dangerous attractiveness creates intensity and importance in the relationship, but that intensity and importance work against stability and sustainability rather than supporting them. What you must understand about being the avoidant's perfect storm, being dangerously attractive to the avoidant person, being their perfect storm, comes with specific implications and required understandings that are crucial for your well-being and for making informed decisions about whether and how to engage with the avoidant person. Understanding what it means to be the avoidant's perfect storm and what this requires of you protects you from being consumed by the dynamic while allowing you to make choices that serve your own growth and healing. The first thing you must understand is that being dangerously attractive to the avoidant does not mean the relationship will work or that you can heal them through the power of being perfectly matched to their needs. Your perfect matching to what they need creates the intensity and the pull, but it does not create their capacity to receive what you offer. The avoidance capacity is determined by their healing work, their therapeutic process, their willingness to sit with discomfort and challenge their defensive patterns. Your attractiveness to them, however perfect, cannot bypass the work they need to do. You cannot love them into healing. You cannot be patient enough to dissolve their defenses. You cannot be accepting enough to eliminate their fears. Being their perfect storm means you have profound impact on them, means they'll think about you and struggle with losing you potentially for years. But it doesn't mean you can make the relationship work through being more of what they need, because what they need most is their own therapeutic work and their own development of capacity, neither of which you can provide for them. The second thing you must understand is that being dangerously attractive means you're in more danger than you would be with someone who is less affected by you. The intensity works both ways. You're not just dangerously attractive to them. They're dangerously attractive to you because the moments of genuine connection you share are so profound, because the glimpses you get of what could be if they could sustain it are so compelling, because the sense of being seen and matched in certain ways is so rare. This mutual, dangerous attraction creates pull that makes it difficult for you to walk away, even when walking away is clearly the healthy choice. Being the avoidance perfect storm means you're at risk of being pulled into the storm yourself, of losing yourself in the intensity and the hope and the cycle of breakthrough and disappointment. Recognizing this danger to yourself is crucial for maintaining your boundaries and protecting your well-being. The third thing you must understand is that being the perfect storm for the avoidant means you'll likely be the one who haunts them, the one they compare everyone else to. the one they recognize as the biggest loss when they look back on their relationship history. This might feel validating or might feel like it gives you power, but you must understand what it actually means. It means they'll carry regret about you, potentially forever, but that regret will not necessarily translate into changed behavior or developed capacity with you or with anyone else. Being the one who haunts them is cold comfort when you're the one who was hurt by their patterns, when you're the one who had to walk away to protect yourself, when you're the one living with the reality that being perfect for them wasn't enough to make relationship work. The recognition that you're their perfect storm should not be mistaken for consolation prize or for indication that reconciliation is possible or wise. The fourth thing you must understand is that your dangerous attractiveness places special responsibility on you to protect yourself through firm boundaries, because the avoidance pull toward you will create repeated attempts to reconnect that may not serve your healing or your forward movement. Because you matter so much to them, because you're irreplaceable in ways other people aren't, the avoidant may reach out repeatedly, may make attempts to maintain connection or to return after pushing you away. These attempts will be compelling because they'll contain real feeling, real recognition of what they lost, sometimes real awareness of their patterns. But unless they're accompanied by evidence of sustained therapeutic work and developed capacity, these attempts are just the pull phase of the push-pull dynamic, not evidence of genuine transformation. Your boundaries must be firm enough to protect you from being pulled back into dynamic that will hurt you again, even when their longing for you is genuine and their attempts to reconnect are heartfelt. The fifth thing you must understand is that being the avoidance perfect storm is not your identity or your purpose, and you must not organize your life around this significance to them. You are not here to be the one who could have healed them if only they'd been ready. You are not here to be the lesson they needed to learn about what they're missing. You are not here to be the haunting presence in their life that motivates them to finally do their work. You are here to live your life, to pursue your own growth and healing, to find relationship with someone who has the capacity to show up for you now, rather than someone who might develop capacity someday. The significance you hold for the avoidant is about their journey, not about your purpose. Your purpose is your own flourishing, your own healing, your own building of meaningful life and meaningful connections with people who can actually meet you where you are. The sixth thing you must understand is that the intensity and the perfect storm quality of the connection can obscure fundamental incompatibility in current capacity that makes relationship unsustainable regardless of feelings. The connection feels so right in moments because it is right in certain ways. You do see each other. You do understand each other. You do match in psychological and emotional ways that are rare. But sustainable relationship requires more than understanding and matching. It requires capacity for consistent presence, for vulnerability, for working through conflict, for commitment. The avoidance lack of capacity in these areas is fundamental incompatibility that the perfect storm attraction cannot overcome. You must distinguish between the truth that the connection is special and the fantasy that special connection is sufficient for healthy relationship. It's not. Capacity matters more than compatibility when capacity is as limited as the avoidance typically is. The seventh and final thing you must understand is that recognizing you're dangerously attractive to the avoidant should empower you to walk away, rather than encouraging you to stay and try harder. Your dangerous attractiveness means you have already given them everything they need to be motivated to change. They've experienced what genuine connection feels like. They've seen what accepting and understanding relationship could be. They've had access to exactly what their wounded heart needs. If this wasn't sufficient to motivate their healing work, nothing else you can do will be sufficient. More patience won't help. More understanding won't help. More acceptance won't help. They have to choose their healing work themselves, motivated by their own recognition that their patterns don't serve them, rather than by your presence or your efforts. Understanding that you've already been everything they need to be motivated means you can release yourself from the false responsibility of trying to be more or different to inspire their change. You've been enough. You've been their perfect storm. If they cannot receive what you offered, that's about their limitations, not about your insufficiency. This recognition should free you to walk away with your head high, knowing you gave them access to exactly what they needed, and that their inability to receive it is their tragedy to bear, not your failure to correct.